Hello and welcome back to p1&2. This will be the reading of After the Fall by Innocent with one and underscore reader. This will be the reading of Chapter 8 On the Road to Tomorrow, Part 1 and 2. Let's get on with the chapter. I feel like my voice is kind of gravelly today, so yeah. The air inside the Batmobile carried the scent of heated rubber and gasoline. A constant reminder that the engine, though nearly silent, never truly rested. Through the cracks of the window slipped an uneven breeze, bringing with it the metallic hang of dust kicked up by the military convoys ahead. The hum of the engine blended with the rush of wind against the car's frame, punctuated now and then by the distant clatter of shifting steel, echoes of a city still fighting to rebuild itself. The temperature inside wavered. Heat radiated upward from the asphalt through the tires, seeping into the cabin, only to be broken every so often by sharp, cooler gusts sweeping in from the east, carrying with them the mingled scents of smoke and far-off salt air. Dick's hands gripped the wheel with practiced steadiness, his eyes scanning the horizon with the precision of someone who understood that every turn of the road might hide the unexpected. The glint of sunlight on the windshield cast fleeting shadows across his face, hardening his expression. In the passenger seat, Wally bounced his leg lightly, his gaze wandering across the passing scenery for all his attempts to appear relaxed. The rhythm of his fingers drumming against his knee betrayed his impatience. In the back seat, Midoriya sat quiet, eyes locked on the window as the world drifted by. He had expected to see ruins, a landscape stalled by silence and despair. But it wasn't quite that. Instead of ghost towns and wastelands, there were signs of motion, of recovery. Supply trucks lumbered along in slow-moving convoys. Cranes hovered over fractured buildings. Here and there, clusters of volunteers cleared debris by hand. Electronic signs along the highway flashed warnings. Checkpoint ahead. Follow local authority instructions. And farther down, humanitarian relief meter, 5 miles. Wally leaned back, propping his feet on the dash, fiddling with the civilian radio. Static broke apart the words of a voiced announcer. The Army maintains presence across all major capitals. The search for surviving heroes continues. Unconfirmed reports place Metropolis under quarantine. In Gotham, local authorities begin regaining control. The Batmobile speedometer held steady, not slow, not reckless. Dick drove with the same laser focus he applied to everything. Eyes locked on the road, hands unyielding on the wheel. For him, the act of driving itself seemed like a way of keeping the world in order. Midoriya drew his knees up, resting his chin on them. The image outside clashed with the memories of his homeland, the UA, his classmates, the pro-heroes. So many gone, so much left behind. Yet here, even amidst devastation, life pressed forward. They keep going, he thought, a knot tightening his chest, even without their heroes. The Batmobile rolled past a halted convoy. Armed soldiers lined the road while civilians unloaded crates from a truck. Children darted through the crowd, laughing, blissfully unaware of the weight of recent loss. They're not stopping anytime soon, Wally muttered, breaking the silence, nodding toward the scene. They can't, Dick replied, his voice clipped, eyes never leaving the highway. If they stop, it all ends. Midoriya glanced at them, struck by how naturally they spoke about survival, as though they had long since folded the disaster into their lives. For him, the wounds were still fresh, still raw. For them, it was already something to endure, to live with. Every so often, Wally twisted the dial, catching fragments of local broadcasts. One voice, far too upbeat, declared, "And despite hardships, the people of Central City gathered this afternoon for a symbolic celebration, the partial reopening of the Central Plaza. Another reminder that, even without our greatest offenders, we can endure." Wally let out a short laugh. "Yeah, that's my city," he said with a crooked smile. "Bet the plaza's still full of holes, but they'll throw a party anyway." Dick stayed silent, steady as stone behind the wheel. Midoriya returned his gaze to the passing landscape. This time, a neighborhood, scarred by direct impact. Charred buildings, red cars, wrecked cars, snapped utility poles. But among the ruins, sparks of life, makeshift tents rising, an ambulance handing out supplies. The silence returned, heavy but not hostile, as though each of them needed that quiet process to process what they sought. Midoriya traced a hand across the worn leather of the seat, imagining the history this vehicle carried. It wasn't just a car. It was a symbol, a testament to resilience. Just like this world, just like them. 3 hours to the next stop, Dick finally said, eyes flicking briefly to the rear view mirror, checking on Midoriya. "Try to get some rest." Midoriya nodded, but couldn't close his eyes. The world outside refused to pause. Broken as it was, it moved on, and somehow now he was part of it. Far ahead, the sun began to sink, spilling orange across the horizon as the Batmobile pressed forward, silent, relentless, alive. Now moving on to chapter 8, On the Road to Tomorrow, part 2. Hours had passed since they left Star City behind. The Batmobile, an older model, the street, its frame more grounded than the sleeker version Midori had seen in files and reports, rolled to a quiet stop along the shoulders of a small town road. Dick cut the engine and exhaled. "We're running low on fuel, and I think we all need to stretch our legs," he said, glancing at Wally and Midoriya. They stepped out slowly. The air carried the faint tang of old smoke and dust, but underneath it lingered something human. Food being cooked, iron being hammered, life piecing itself back together. The town, its battered sign still managing to read "Welcome to Keystone Springs," was little more than a cluster of modest homes, cracked asphalt roads, and makeshift lampposts. Civilians hauled planks of wood, stacked bricks, raised temporary frames. It wasn't desperation, but it wasn't joy either. Just the relentless need to keep moving forward. The heart of the place beat in an even rhythm. Once broad streets had been rerouted by rows of lumber, where crews carried buckets of improvised cement. Hammer strikes rang out in a rough cadence against the fractured walls, bleeding with the constant hum of small generators, powering a scattering of lights. Wires stretched like spiderwebs from windows and doorways, held up by bent hooks or twisted scraps of metal. In front of a bakery, a line had formed. The smell of fresh bread cut through the dusty air. A woman balanced a tray piled high, exhaustion written across her face. But still smiling at the children tugging at her sleeves. Kids ran around with sticks or for swords, darting between scaffolds and rubble, turning ruins into castles in their minds. And here and there, signs of hope had taken root. A street musician strumming a guitar with only 3 strings, hastily written posters taped to walls with words of encouragement, and even an old town flag rising stubbornly above the debris, fluttering with quiet defiance. Midoriya took it all in, every detail. In Japan, he'd seen this before, after disasters, when ordinary people rebuilt without waiting for heroes to fix everything. Here, it was no different. I'll see if I can trade for some fuel, Dick said, heading toward a makeshift workshop where a middle-aged man with old stained arms was overseeing repairs for a battered military truck. Wally trailed with him a few steps, then stopped when he spotted a stand set up along the sideway. A kindly older woman was selling bread wrapped in clean cloth. I think I'll grab something too. What do you say, Zuko? Hungry? Midoriya hesitated, then gave a small nod. A little. They walked over. The simple, comforting aroma of fresh bread mixed with the steam of soup boiling in a pot nearby, and Midoriya's stomach growled before he could stop it. 2, please, Wally said, handing over a few coins. The woman smiled, wordless, and passed them the bread. They sat on the curb while they ate, watching the town churn with movement. Kids chased after a patched-up ball while a few adults debated how best to rebuild a bridge further south. Funny, Wally said after a mouthful. I thought things would be worse. Midoriya nodded, glancing around. I thought it would be all empty, but they're still here. That's the point, Wally said, a half smile tugging at his lips. They keep going, with or without us. He tore into his bread like someone who hadn't eaten properly in days and let out a satisfied groan. Man, this is better than any fast food joint back in Central. I think I'm gonna miss this bread once we get back on the road. Midoriya took a smaller bite, chewing softly. The flavor was simple, salty with a faint sweetness at the end. It wasn't like anything from home, but it had something. Honest. His eyes flipped to the woman at the stall, still smiling softly as she arranged more bread in the basket. It tastes like effort, he murmured, while he raised a brow. Effort? Midoriya nodded, searching for the words. Like, you can feel the work in it. She's exhausted, but she still chooses to feed people. Back in my world, after disasters, I saw families do the same thing, small things that kept everyone standing. Wally was quiet for a moment, staring at the bread in his hand, then let out a short laugh. You really can turn anything, even food, into an inspirational speech, Izuku. The boy blushed, shaking his head. No, that's not it. I just feel like every detail matters. Wally bit into another piece, thoughtful. Maybe that's what Dick sees in you. Me, I just run. I'm fast, useful. But you, somehow, notice the things nobody else does. Reminds me of another guy I once knew. Midoriya didn't know how to answer. He just kept chewing. He just eyes fixed on the children chasing the patched up ball. Their laughter rang louder than the hammering in the distance. Robin appeared at the entrance of the workshop, his shirt cape shifting slightly with the draft. The mechanic, his apron stained with grease, stopped what he was doing and narrowed his eyes. Silence rippled through the workers. Everyone recognized the symbol on his chest, even far from Gotham. Need something, Mask? The man asked, cautious but curious. Robin nodded. Gas, just enough to reach the next town. His voice was steady, controlled, without arrogance. The mechanic frowned. Fuel isn't cheap, or easy to get. Each gallon can mean the difference between a family surviving or being stranded on the road. Robin crossed his arms, his gaze fixed. I'm not asking for free. I'll pay what's fair. He pulled a small stack of bills from his belt, showing it only for a moment. I can also offer something more valuable. Knowledge. The man raised a brow. Knowledge? Robin stepped aside and pointed at the military truck being repaired. The front axle is misaligned. Keep it like that, and it'll break again before it runs 20 kilometers. A murmur ran through the workers. The mechanic squinted at him, skeptical. You know engines? Robin tilted his head slightly. I know survival, and never to trust first impressions. He let the words hang, almost like a challenge. If I'm right and I can stabilize the truck, you give me 1 gallon. The man studied him in silence, then shrugged. All right, bad kid. Now, show me what you've got. The kid rolled up his gloves and knelt beside the chassis. His hands moved with precision, adjusting the parts and directing the helpers with quick, sharp instructions. Within minutes, the engine roared back to life, smoother and steadier. The mechanic cracked a surprised grin. Not bad. Guess the symbol is just for show after all. He shoved the gallon forward. A deal's a deal. Take it. Robin gripped the metal handle and nodded. Thanks. Then, before leaving, he added, Hope that truck lasts more than 20 kilometers now. The mechanic chuckled, shaking his head. You remind me of someone. Stubborn. But never backing down. Maybe the world still needs stubborn types like that. Robin didn't answer. He just adjusted his cape and walked back to rejoin the others. Got enough to reach the next stop, he reported, and also a backup route. The main bridge is damaged, so we'll take the secondary road. Not every day I see you working as a mechanic partner. Wally's tone was playful, but his eyes carried relief. Midoriya, however, seemed more impressed than surprised. You actually fixed their truck? Robin sent the gallon down with a heavy thud. It didn't cost me anything, and we got what we need. Wally crossed his arms, a smirk tugging at his lips. Not bad, leader, but next time let me handle the negotiations. I'm way more charismatic. Charismatic or troublemaker? Robin shot back, dry. Midoriya muffled a laugh, shaking his head. Doesn't matter, as long as we keep moving. The three shared a quick glances, and the tension that had hovered since morning seemed to ease a little. They returned to the car lighter, even if the road's weight hadn't disappeared. The Batmobile's deep growl filled the air once more as Robin turned the ignition. The freshly earned gallon would only last a few more miles, but it was enough to keep them going. The car rolled out of the city. Wally leaned his cheek against his fist, watching through the window. You know, part of me wants to stick around, help fix something. He shrugged. But I guess we don't really have that luxury, huh? Robin didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed locked on the secondary road. The reflections, the, ref, the reflections of splintered trees sliding past the windshield. Only after a few seconds did he speak. Low. Every stop is a test. We see how the world goes on without us, and we have to decide if we step in or move on. Midoriya from the back seat lifted his gaze. And what do you decide, Robin? The question lingered. Dick lined his grip on the wheel, remembering the wall sprayed with simple words. We keep going. I decide we need to be ready. When the right moment comes, we'll fight for what's left. Until then, we keep going too. The silence settled inside the car, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was silence of understanding, heavy, necessary. The Batmobile accelerated, disappearing down the secondary road, while behind them, Keystone Springs kept building its own invisible walls against the void. This radio crackled again, carrying distant news. Support groups established in San Francisco. Zatanna Zatara reported as one of the leaders in organizing civil resistance. Midoriya clenched his fist quietly at the name. San Francisco. They were on the right path. And that was the end of Chapter 8 on the Road to Tomorrow, Part 1 and 2. I think this chapter has 4 parts. So the next video will be finishing. Well, the next video on this fic will be finishing this chapter. So yeah, hope you like this, and please leave some criticism or whatever. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, just check them out. Link in this will be in the description. Well, as you know, this is the fic of After the Fall by Innocent with one _reader. Now go check them out. I need some water.